welcome to the Madhouse UK podcast, and here we are trying to keep up with our almost daily podcast. Now, of course, I didn't do one yesterday because yesterday was run day and I was running the game all night, actually, until the small hours of the morning. So it was a good old chore, but we got it out and done, and everyone should have had their turns by now. Hopefully you're enjoying them. So a few things to cover today. I've had a few emails and messages, and I thought I would use them to build the content of this particular podcast. So the first one is... I wanted to talk a little bit about player killing and in-character combat. Obviously, with the situation at the moment where the Raven has taken his city, Poldoon, independent of the kingdom, and obviously people who are loyal to the crown feel quite strongly about that. And there is a danger with this sort of rift, if you like, created rift, but a rift, that people get a bit too hit up about it. So remember, it's a game. Of course, you all know that. But I would prefer, and I would advise, that communications about this stay in character. Don't talk, try to always talk from your character's perspective. And I know it's quick and easy just to write from your name on, say, Facebook or on Yahoo or wherever, and presume that people understand that it's from the character, but it does create a slightly different atmosphere. So my advice is always say so-and-so says, to make it clear that you understand you're playing your part. I know you all do, but it does sometimes stop people getting a little tetchy. And remember, in the game, whilst you can kill one another in character, it almost never happens because there are some fairly strong in-game mechanics to prevent it. Those in-game mechanics will continue even despite the current rift in the kingdom, which is probably going to escalate with more things that are coming fairly soon. So try to see if you can manage it in such a way that you all stay friendly and appreciate it. It's good fun, and we'll see where it goes. We'll see what happens with the plot. Don't start attacking one another in the game because it should be roleplay at this stage. There might be a time when there's some fighting in the future. I don't know where the plot's going to go. That really depends on how players react to things. But if it comes to that point, it will come to that point through a choice, through like a separate map that you can choose to go to if you want to take part, with the understanding that there are some consequences to it, just in the usual way. What I don't want is for people to burst into flurries of combat in the game and break what has been a very long positive outlook of the game. 20 years of positive outlook of the game, actually. So just remember that, and any questions, always ask me. Just drop me a line, and don't forget, tomorrow night, Sunday night, at 7 o'clock in the evening, that's Greenwich Mean Time, British time. Is it Greenwich Mean Time? I forget which one it is when the clocks are back, but British time anyway. You need to come along to the chat room, which you can find from our website, and log in and join in the chat. It's about an hour's worth of chat we're going to do, in and out of character, but talking about the plot and answering people's questions about the legal situation and about some of how the different geography affects people and that sort of thing. Really anything you want to talk about. Probably have some laughs as well, so do feel free to pop in. Okay, so with that said, a couple of other interesting things have happened. I got a message from Scott Vandersea, and he said, he was talking about the last podcast, he said he found it interesting. He asked, historically, which lands have Kyr claimed, just the pass or lands currently part of the kingdom. So to remind you all, Kyr is the desert kingdom, which is kind of off to the northeast of Bereny. And the way that you get to Kyr in the game is that you leave the kingdom onto the Berenian Pass, which is a long stretch of neutral land that takes lots of turns to walk across. It's a big old bit of map, lots of threats along the way, but there is a sort of road, and it winds its way all the way along and eventually enters the Empire of Kyr, which is a separate play area that you can sign up and play in if you want to. Very deserty, giants and djinn and kind of eastern style creatures. Anyway, so the question was an interesting one. Which lands have Kyr claims? Well, broadly, this is an interesting battle of the different bits of the world, if you like, because Berenian law, traditional Berenian law that goes back, hundreds of years in the game, is that Bereny owns everything. So the original law books said that Bereny ruled the entire world, and everything in the world was part of the kingdom of Bereny. Now, that is what's considered an old-fashioned mindset now. Some people are still traditionalists, but broadly, people are a bit more progressive than that in the game, and understand that actually that was the sort of thing that people said back when they didn't even know there were other areas outside of Bereny, or vaguely knew but hadn't really been there. And all of these other places have had their own rulers and their own leaders and their own empires and kings. So it's less pushed these days, although it still sits in Berenian law. It's a little bit of an embarrassment in Berenian law, and a lot of people don't believe that anymore, and they accept, and there's been neutral pacts between the surrounding kingdoms. So all around Bereny there are interesting places. If you look up at the northwest, that's where the province of Derwent is, the steamworks region of the game, which had a big problem, and Bereny helped them with, because they had a plague that was doing all sorts of damage, and that had to be resolved. And so their refugees came to Bereny a number of years ago, real time, and resided in Bereny for a bit, and there was some political interplay and machinations, but most of that's passed now. Off to the west is the Broken Lands, which is a huge area of massive devastation, where if you go there you get radiation sickness. So there are many rumours about how that began, and there have even been some missions to try and discover how it began. But broadly, it was supposedly some sort of magical war that created this huge area of devastation. And that is where the original free game took place. Underneath the Broken Lands there's a vast dungeon, and that is where we used to put free players, but of course you can now do free play pretty much anywhere. So to the south of the kingdom there's the Southern Glaciers. Now that is traditionally even part of Bereny, even by Berenian standards. Even modern Berenians still believe the glaciers are part of Bereny. The glacier barbarians who make their home there, not quite so sure. And you can go further, you can go to the really frigid south, where it gets so cold, and even the barbarians don't go there very much. Off to the east is Frontier, that's our jungle region, and again, to get to the Frontier you can't just cross the border and be in it. You have to go across a very long stretch of overland, which gets wilder and stranger until you reach the jungly area of Frontier. And then way over the other side of Kyr, in the far northeast, is the Golden Coast, which is our area, which is kind of piratical. We've got pirates and ninjas, and lots of water and lots of boat stuff, and travelling to islands. That's a different sort of adventure as well. There's a couple of other places that have been alluded to, like Kriegmund, but we won't say too much about Kriegmund really, because that was a module that didn't work as well as the others, for reasons I'll perhaps podcast about one of these days. So the question is, which bit of the lands does Kyr claim? Well, Kyr has always said that it didn't originally believe that it owned the whole world in the way that Bereny does, but it did believe that it owned all of the land right up to the Berenian border, and in fact old maps show perhaps 30 or 40 miles into the border, so not quite to where Poldoon is, but perhaps halfway between the border and Poldoon, Kyr would say was part of Kyr. And there was a war a number of years ago, real time in the game. There was a war between Kyr and Bereny when they tried to kind of push their luck a little bit and push their way into Bereny and reclaim some of that land. Bereny won the war, and a settlement pact was agreed, and since then it's been peaceful. But this new empress in Kyr seems to have a view to start pushing the envelope again, so we'll see how that goes. But so the gist of it is, the Bereny would probably argue now that the border is the edge of where the Berenian Pass is. But the Berenian Pass is neutral, so that the two don't constantly butt up against one another. And the danger is, of course, that each one tries to edge into the neutral territory a little bit until the borders get closer and closer and conflict begins. So there is where the challenge lies in the diplomacy. And what makes it really interesting is that the nearest city to the pass that goes to Kyr is Poldoon, which is now an independent city-state. Certainly until something else happens. So it's also quite an interesting thing. We'll see how that pans out. If you've got more questions, pop along to the chat room on Sunday. We can thrash them out and work them out as we go. Okay, so what else have I got? I got a message from David Pennywell. He's currently running the Order, which is one of I think the oldest or second oldest guild in the game. And it went into stasis for a while and wasn't very active, but David's now trying to push it back to being very active again. He's done a deal with the Sylvan Alliance, another popular guild in the game, and the Sylvan Alliance has got a dungeon and its own mission to do. I will do this for other guilds. I have done it for guilds in the past, and I will do it for your guild. You've really got to show that your guild is as active as these others are, and you've got to present me with an idea. Don't expect me to just give you it on a plate, because I'm constantly adding things to the game. I'm always coming up with new things, but I want to know what you think will be a fun thing that your guild would like to do, and how many people would be involved, and how it would benefit the game. And if you make a good sales pitch to me, then I'm quite happy to do a specific dungeon or adventure area for you guys too. But so far, David has said that the Order are going to join the Sylvan Alliance, and him and Paul Malone have come up with some sort of a deal. I'm not privy to the full details of it, but I believe the two guilds are going to travel together, and that's great because Sylvan Alliance, busy guild, the Order will start to develop again. If you're new to the game and you're wondering what guild should I join, well, they're all good, but the Order certainly could do with some assistance to get itself up and running again. There are lots of other guilds out there though, of course. Okay, what else? We had a bit of a chat on the Yahoo group about the transcription of this podcast onto Yahoo groups. So I just want to be a bit clearer about that because I don't want to boss you guys around and I don't want to stop you doing stuff. So please don't take it that if you want to do a transcript, I'm going to say don't do it and nothing like that. You know, I simply wanted to explain the plans for the future. And the idea is, you know, to keep the game growing. Now, presently, it's doing all right. I'm quite pleased with the progress of the game. But I'm always aware that players come and players go, and one of these days you get to a tipping point where too many go and the atmosphere is lost and the game falls to pieces. That's never happened to us. We've done very well, touch wood. And I don't want it to ever happen, but we have to always think to the future. Now, I didn't start closing Yahoo groups. That was their decision, but it's quite an old method of communication, really. And I suppose we shouldn't be surprised that things are moving on. It's not closed yet, and we might be able to continue using it for discussion for years to come. But just thinking to the future, things like podcasts on YouTube attract attention that you don't get otherwise. Yahoo groups don't attract any attention. You very rarely get people join who haven't already joined the game. And they very rarely do they join and then join the game. That just doesn't happen. But I've already, since the podcast began, picked up a bunch of new players from the podcast who discovered the podcast on YouTube, and have said, I'll give that a go. Sounds interesting. Don't know what's going on here, but let's give it a shot. And we are picking up players, and some of them are becoming quite involved in the game. I think it's a good way to keep the game growing, and I hope you guys will agree. And I just want to encourage you. I know some of you are leery of YouTube and you're leery of Facebook, but these are, I mean, come on, our grandparents are now able to use Facebook. You guys can crack Facebook. I'm not telling you to do everything with Facebook, to contact all your old friends or any of that stuff that is irritating on Facebook for some people. All I'm saying is just make an account and come and join the Madhouse forum. You don't have to do anything else on there if you don't want to, but it's a good backup in case Yahoo goes boom. And I'm gradually shifting my performance. Somebody just comes crashing into the room there in the middle of my podcast. So I'm gradually shifting what I'm doing, with a view to trying to get people to move towards Facebook and towards Yahoo. So I really hope that you guys will kind of join me along the way. But don't think that means whoever is coming in my door, please close my door. Thank you. I love it when people come in while I'm doing a podcast. It's great. So as I was saying, just try to bear in mind that this is to try and grow the game. Well, I'm really not trying to stop you using the things you love, and I'm still going to keep supporting the Yahoo groups. You've seen that. I still use it all the time because some of you just love it. And whatever else we use, I'm going to try and use it and support it. But I would appreciate you doing the same for me, coming and subscribing to the podcast if you feasibly can, and also joining the Facebook group. And we'll see which ones work. Maybe your versions will work out better than mine. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything. The only other thing I really wanted to say was to remind you once again, tomorrow night is the first of our weekly chat rooms, should be most weeks, and it's going to be 7 o'clock British time. You can get to the link from our main website, and do come and join us, and let's have a good chat about the game, a live chat, and maybe I'll even record it and then replay it as part of a podcast. Till then, talk to you soon. Bye.